You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC Fight Night St. Louis versus NASCIMENTO, which takes place this upcoming Saturday night from St. Louis, Missouri, with a main event bout in the heavyweight division between Derek the Black Beast Lewis taking on Rodrigo NASCIMENTO, and in the co-main event of the evening, we have a hometown boy in Joaquin New Mansa Buckley taking on a man with over 40 fights in professional mixed martial arts and a somewhat newcomer who's undefeated to the UFC with 2 finishes in Nursultan Ruziboev. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right. We're here for UFC St. Louis, Derek Lewis versus Rodrigo NASCIMENTO. UFC 301 was a pretty good card. Obviously, the main event, I think Steve Erceg got robbed. I won't call it like a robbery, but I just can't believe that Pantoja keeps winning these fights. He's undefeated against every top 10 fighter that he's faced. Only fight that he's lost in the UFC, I believe, was to Davison Figueiredo. But you know, Alexandre Pantoja, this dude just finds a way to win. He doesn't defend punches. He gets cracked with every shot that you hit him with almost. But, you know, you can't put him down. He doesn't go down. We've seen him get wobbled on the feet before, but he never goes down. He never puts himself in a vulnerable position. Erceg was piecing him up from range. I mean, piecing him up, cracking him with the jab. Landed some good step-in elbows off the pressure style and forward pressure of Pantoja. And then Pantoja would get some takedowns, find a way to take his back. Erceg did scramble out of certain positions and actually worked his way back up to the feet. All the damage in the fight was done by Steve Erceg, but he gave up a takedown by going for his own takedown and then getting reversed in a scramble and getting controlled in the last round. And I think that's really what cost him the fight, because I had it either 3-1 Erceg going into round 5 or 2-2. And it being all tied up. And I really think that little reversal off the ill-advised takedown attempt from Erceg, I think that's really what cost him. I think Erceg, you know, like I said, I won't call it a robbery, but I scored it for Erceg. And then Jose Aldo, I mean, he looked like a minus 400 favorite at certain points in that fight against Jonathan Martinez. You know, I said Martinez doesn't really have any boxing. It's all knees, left kicks to the body, left inside low kicks, and Aldo almost finished him in round 3. I had a bet on Aldo by TKO. If Aldo wins by TKO, I win like $400 or $500. But he wins by decision. So, of course, me playing the method of victory, you know, screws me over. But, you know, that's my fault because, I mean, the odds for Aldo to win by TKO when I first bet it was like plus 700. And we saw Jonathan Martinez get knocked out by Davey Grant, who, you know, is not the biggest power puncher, but he's got some pop in his shots. Yeah, I mean, UFC 301 was good. Elves Brenner and Miktebek Uralbai. Uralbai's forward pressure, his wrestling, but Brenner reversed some spots, got into full mount on Miktebek going into the end, or at the end of the second round going into the third, but Brenner just didn't have the cardio to push through in that third round. I really think if Brenner had that cardio to push after, you know, a really tough first round, I think he might have been able to get Uralbai out of there. But either way, he comes in, gets another win in his UFC career. Yeah, I mean, we expected Petrino to win, and look what happened. What did we talk about? We said that if Petrino didn't mind his P's and Q's, I thought Smith could pull it out. And I said the best way for him to do so would either be to stick behind his straight punches, his 1-2s, the jab in the right hand, or to go to his grappling and go to his jiu-jitsu. And what happens? Petrino shoots a double leg and gets caught in a guillotine and then lifts up Anthony Smith and picks his head up, which allows Smith to sink the guillotine in deeper and get a first-round submission. Huge win for Anthony Smith. That was a really big prospect for the UFC coming off the Contender Series. I think Smith by submission without any rounds on FanDuel was like plus 1,400, like 14-1. And, yeah, man, I mean, great win for Anthony Smith. I had a bet on Joaquim Silva by submission in round 2 and round 3, and then the Jose Aldo by TKO. I feel like both of those bets were good reads going into the card. And, I mean, Silva almost had that guillotine in round 3 after he rocked Drakkar and then jumped the guillotine. Drakkar goes to slam him, but he slams him backwards, not forwards, and, winds up in a mounted guillotine. I think like 4 or 5 more seconds in that choke, and Silva would have got the sub. But big third round from Joaquim Silva. Pretty lackluster first 2 rounds from both guys, with Drakkar just getting a lot of control time. But yeah, overall, I mean, UFC 301 was good. I think Ernesta Carrasqueta got robbed. We picked her as an underdog, and I think she got robbed. I think it was 2 rounds to 1 clearly for Ernesta Carrasqueta. She lost the first round by getting taken down, getting controlled, almost getting submitted, getting rocked. But I think Carrasqueta won round 2 and round 3, and I think she looked exactly how I expected her to look, where she was going to be able to defend the grappling positions, was going to be able to defend the takedowns, and was going to be able to kind of piece up Deone Barbosa on the feet. But, I feel like that was a good pick at such a big underdog price tag. I think when the fight started, she was like 2-1, plus 200, plus 210, and I think Carrasqueta should have won that fight, but it is what it is, and, you got to keep the judges in mind with the Brazilian, I don't know what you would call it, the Brazilian favoritism, because they were in Brazil, but yeah, I mean, UFC 301, let's see, we talked about Smith, Aldo, Pantoja, Ursig, Michelle Pereira with that crazy backflip into like the knee to the head, and then the guillotine was crazy. Caio Borralho with the second round KO. I called the KO for Borralho, and I actually bet Borralho KO 2-3. I put it in a parlay. It was Borralho KO 2-3, Michelle Pereira to win in the first 2 rounds. And then I had Elves Brenner by KO TKO in round 2 or round 3. And then somebody else earlier on the card. And it would have been a nice payout if Aldo would have got that TKO like we said. But it is what it is. And then if Brenner would have won, that would have been another nice payout. But, yeah, the Joaquim Silva read. I mean, our reads were there. Joe Anderson Brito made that shit look easy. Dominated Jack Shore. Yasmin Lucindo, we knew that was going to go down the way that it did. Yeah, and then I think if the Gene Silva and Gomez fight would have went through, we would have had the KO from Gene Silva in that one as well. So, it is what it is. Mauricio Hufi looked incredible. He reminds me a lot of like a new age Conor McGregor. That scissor sweep, the pullback left hand, the 1-2s, the counter straight left. Looked amazing. Just beat the absolute shit out of Jamie Malarkey. Ishmael Bonfim actually impressed me. He looked good for all 3 rounds and didn't slow down at all. The one pick I kind of hit myself for and shoot myself in the foot for is the Kevin Borjas pick over Alessandro Costa, because I feel like the read was there. I feel like Borjas was kind of picking it up, but the minute that calf kick started to work, the fight was over, and it was just calf kick, calf kick, calf kick, get to the top position, and ground and pound him out in the early portions of round 2. But I like Borjas. It's just he can't seem to put it together, and I thought Costa was going to be a good matchup for him, but it obviously wasn't, and Costa keeps proving that this dude's the real deal. We knew that going into this fight, obviously, but it is what it is, like I said, and we got to move on, and we're going to move on right now to UFC St. Louis. All right, and we're going to kick off UFC St. Louis with the first fight up between Veronica Hardy, formerly Veronica Macedo, coming in off of a 2-fight win streak over Juliana Miller, and the formerly undefeated Jamie Lynn Horth, taking on a UFC, I guess you could say a UFC stablemate, a very solid top contender. She's never been at the top, but has always been around in J.J. Aldrich. Hardy versus Aldrich is an interesting one. I think when you look at this fight, a lot of people are going to just be heavy on Veronica Hardy. She was a huge underdog against Juliana Miller, came into that fight and absolutely dominated, looked like a future world champion, and then she goes in against Jamie Lynn Horth, basically dominates the first round and 3 quarters. First round, easy round for Veronica. Second round was good, but Jamie Lynn Horth was starting to get on the inside and make it dirty. And then Veronica Hardy lost the third round, getting tired, getting pushed up against the cage, getting controlled in either the head and arm clinch or the double unders or the over unders, and getting kneed to the body over and over, getting elbowed, getting caught with step-in elbows all the time. And, obviously gave up that last round, but won the first 2. I think in this fight, the more well-rounded fighter is Veronica Hardy. I think the better striker is Veronica Hardy. She's very in and out, very Taekwondo, traditional martial arts style with her footwork. She's constantly using that triangle step, moving in and out, circling, stepping into range, and she never stops moving. That's the one thing I like. And I think against a fighter like J.J. Aldrich has a pretty good lead hand. They're both going to be southpaw, so they're going to have the lead right jab and the straight left hand behind it. And I think Aldrich is good with throwing that, check hook over the top, coming in with the straight right. I think the person who hits harder is J.J. Aldrich, but I think the cleaner striker, the girl who's better on her feet, the girl who has better movement, the girl who's better defensively, the girl who mixes it up better, and the girl who knows how to win better, I think is Veronica Hardy. If she was coming into this fight as an underdog, I would play it all day. She's not. She's like minus 140, minus 150. I think it's warranted. I'm surprised she's not a bigger favorite, but I think that third round against Jamie Lynn Horth, who did come in undefeated at 6-0 in their fight, kind of soured people a little bit, showing that she does slow down. And if you really push the pace and get on the inside, you can work the body and slow down a girl like Hardy, who's very heavy on finesse, footwork, lateral movement, and landing good counters. I think Veronica Hardy's just kind of going to piece up Aldrich, and the only way Aldrich really wins this one is if she just makes it dirty, kind of like Veronica, or kind of like Jamie Lynn Horth. But I think people are like, oh, well, she beat Liang Na, but Liang Na, she always has a good first round. She's always dangerous, but after that, she falls off a cliff in terms of cardio, and you can just basically beat her in whatever realm of the game you want, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. Aldrich ended up getting the job done by ground and pound TKO. I think Aldrich is the heavier puncher. I think Veronica Hardy's the better kicker. I think Veronica Hardy has better movement. I think she makes better decisions in terms of in-fight decisions, her lateral movement, her counter game, the 1-2s, the pivots, the step-off and pivots, the angle shifts, her ability to reverse if the fight does hit the ground. I think Aldrich on top of Hardy could be a problem because Aldrich is a strong girl. But to be honest, I think this is a Veronica Hardy fight all day. I think she pieces her up on the feet. And unless Aldrich can make it dirty, get in close, push her up against the cage, knee to the body, knee to the thigh, elbows over the top, and work her boxing on the inside, I think the later rounds favor a girl like Aldrich, but the early to mid rounds favor a girl like Veronica Hardy. I think Hardy's going to be too quick and too slick for a girl like Aldrich, who has never really impressed me at all in her UFC career, but she's not terrible. Her striking looks decent. Her boxing looks decent. Her technique is okay, but she's going to be outmatched technically with Veronica Hardy here. I think Hardy wins 2 rounds out of the 3, slows down a little bit, and makes that third round close again, or maybe wins round 2 and 3, loses the first round. I think there's going to be a round in there where Aldrich gets 1 round, but I think for the most part it's going to be Hardy sticking and moving, reversing positions on the mat, and avoiding the strength of Aldrich and the power in close. So give me Veronica Hardy to win this fight. I'll go 29-28 unanimous decision. But I'm a big Veronica Hardy fan since she's made this return, and since she's got Dan Hardy in her corner, who is her husband, but also her coach. And I like Veronica Hardy a lot. So give me Veronica Hardy as the favorite in a 29-28 unanimous decision. Would not be surprised if she got a submission in this fight. So if you're looking to play a finish prop, I wouldn't recommend it. I would just play money line, or if you want to play decision. But I think Hardy can snatch up a sub if she's kind of piecing her up on the feet and Aldrich kind of makes a mistake and goes into grappling exchanges that she shouldn't. Because Hardy does have very, very solid jiu-jitsu in grappling. But I'm going to take Veronica Hardy by decision. Let's move on to the next one. All right, up next, you've got a battle between Jared the Night Train Gooden taking on Kevin Jusay. I'm going to be real with you. I don't think this fight is close. I think the only chance that Jared Gooden has in this fight is a puncher's chance, and this is going to take place in the 170-pound welterweight division. Gordon coming in 23-9, Kevin Jusay 10-2, fighting out of City Kickboxing. Sorry if I kind of reversed the way I was talking about that, but when I go to break this fight down, Gooden has a puncher's chance. Gooden has the ability to get on the inside, land a big hook. You saw in his last fight against Wellington Turman, he got rocked, he got stumbled, he got wobbled, and then they both exchanged 1-2-3s, and off the 2-3, Gooden's got there first, rocked Wellington Turman, and then he got reversed into a takedown, got put into the full mount because he was out of it at that point, and then got destroyed with a rear naked choke in a fight where Turman was a pretty big favorite, at least 2.5 to 1. And Gooden was an underdog. Gooden has a lot of power. Gooden has good striking, no pun intended. Actually, yes, pun intended. But, he's decently technical. He moves well, but his defense is not the best. He gets hit a lot. He doesn't really move his head that well and kind of relies on power. But, like I said, he does have technique. But I think he's going to be outgunned here against Kevin Jousset, who got a submission win in his UFC debut, even though he's not really known as a grappler. Can get submissions, can go for takedowns, but he's a long, rangy kickboxer. Likes to stay on the outside. Jab, check hook, 1-2, jab, low kick, front kick to the body, 1-2-3, pull counter, right hand, knee to the body. The only way Gooden wins this fight is the same way that I think the only way Aldrich wins the fight against Hardy, is to get on the inside, make it dirty, make it nasty, crash the pocket, push Jousset up against the cage, land big uppercuts, land big hooks, land a big overhand, try to land a knee up the middle if Jousset level changes, and just make it dirty. We saw Gooden has jiu-jitsu and has submissions going up against Turman, who is a very solid grappler in his own right, and known as a really good grappler, training with Alex Pereira and Glover Teixeira, but, he doesn't have the best chin. Gooden doesn't have the best chin either, but he was a little bit more durable than Wellington Turman in that fight. But if Turman's left hook would have landed before Gooden's landed, then he would have gotten rocked and probably would have gotten finished. But it was Gooden's who landed first, and that's what made the difference. But it wasn't so much that Gooden was better technically, it was just he got there first in an exchange where whoever got there first was probably going to land and hurt their opponent. I think Jousset is too long, too tall, too rangy. Being long and using your reach, using your measure, using your frames and kind of backing up and circling, it can leave you open for big overhands, big hooks, if you don't move your head. But I think Jousset measures well enough. He keeps his distance. He throws those front kicks, those teeps up the middle, elbows, uppercuts, knees, and I think he's just going to mix it up on Gooden, and I think he's going to put him away. I thought he was going to get a finish in his last fight. He probably should have against Song Kenan, who I think Song Kenan is better technically than Jared Gooden, better technically in every aspect of MMA than Jared Gooden, but, doesn't have as much power as Gooden. So the power, the inside fighting, the aggression, getting into wild exchanges, that's where Gooden's going to win this fight. He obviously could get on the inside and land a big shot and hurt Jousset, but I think Jousset is too smart. His fight IQ is too high. He measures, uses his reach too well, and is going to be just poking, prodding, and picking apart Jared Gooden at range and keeping it at the distance that he wants to. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset to win this fight by a late second round TKO. Wouldn't surprise me if it went to decision, but I think eventually he's just going to crack Gooden one too many times, hurt him, and pour it on with a combination. I'm going to say he lands a knee up the middle. Like he goes with a bunch of punches, uppercut, hook, 1-1-2, and then he lands a big knee as he rocks Gooden, and he puts him down and gets the TKO. So give me Kevin Jousset via second round TKO with a knee right up the middle in the clinch or a counter knee in the midst of an exchange. All right, the next fight up on the card in the flyweight division is one that actually is very difficult to break down between Jake Hadley and Charles the Energy Johnson. I just spent about 10 minutes breaking this fight down, and then the audio was all messed up, so hopefully it sounds better, but I'm not going to spend as much time on it. Here's the deal. The inactivity of Charles Johnson and the kind of poke and prod, front kick, elbows, knees, everything that he throws, he doesn't throw enough of it, and he kind of gets behind on his own accord. If Charles Johnson was more active, if he threw more shots, if he threatened with more combinations, if he threatened with more submissions, I think he's a very dangerous fighter in the division at 125 pounds. Former LFA 125-pound champion. But Jake Hadley is going to be the quicker boxer. I think he has crisper hands. He works the body very good, like we saw against Malcolm Gordon. Can go back up top, and he has very good jiu-jitsu off of his back. I think the better grappler in terms of a technical basis is Jake Hadley, because he can throw up more submissions off of his back, go for arm bars, go for triangles, look to lock up guillotines, and he will be active with his jiu-jitsu, even if he's the one on his back and he gets taken down. Charles Johnson has jiu-jitsu, but he only really uses his jiu-jitsu in terms of a defensive position and not so much in terms of offensive grappling and active grappling. He uses it to defend takedowns and go for ninja chokes or Darce chokes like he did against Cody Durden and like he did against Azat Maxim. He went for that ninja choke and almost got it. And then he went for a Darce choke against Cody Durden and ended up almost getting that as well. But then Durden survived the round. Both of these guys have losses via decision to Cody Durden, just getting taken down, getting controlled, getting out wrestled, getting out volumed and outpaced by Durden, who's a very high level fighter, but he's very high on his pace, forward pressure, and wrestling, and just suffocating you under that good old fashioned grind. I think in this fight, it's basically a coin flip. I think it's 50-50, and I think if Johnson is more active, but he keeps it at his distance and range, he probably is going to land more strikes than Hadley. But if Hadley gets on the inside, he's probably going to work the body, come back up top with combinations, and he's going to be faster with his boxing combinations when he's in close. I think the better wrestler is Jake Hadley, but I think it's not going to be that much better to where we're probably going to get scrambles between Johnson and Hadley, and it's going to be the fact of who winds up in a better position based on how those scrambles pan out. Is it going to be Hadley shooting the takedowns and Johnson going for the ninja chokes or guillotines? Is it going to be Johnson shooting takedowns and maybe getting it but getting reversed or getting put into a submission that he has to defend? I think this fight is very, very close, and this is a fight I wouldn't bet on. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. If there was one fight I would avoid on the entire card, it's this fight, and it's the main event. And we're going to talk about the other fights after this. But I'm going to side with Charles Johnson to get the job done by a split decision. I think it's going to go to decision, but I think Johnson is at the point in his UFC career now where he kind of knows that he has to pick up the pace. He knows that he can't fall behind on the scorecards. He'll throw more volume and put more things out there, and that's what he did in his fight against Azat Maksum, where he got clipped, he got cracked, he got rocked. And if we're looking at Hadley and Johnson, the only one we've seen get rocked, wobbled, and hurt in his UFC career so far is Charles Johnson. And it wasn't his last fight against Azat Maksum, but he was able to survive, put the pace on him, almost finish him, and then almost submit him in Johnson almost submitting Maxim with that ninja choke. I think Johnson's going to be more active. I think Johnson has fought the better competition in the UFC, and I think he's going to be able to pull this one out. I think it's going to be close, but I'm going Charles Johnson to be more active in the striking, be better at distance and range, and kind of keeping Hadley away from him, and getting takedowns when he needs to, but being able to avoid the submissions. So give me Charles, the Energy Johnson, to defeat Jake Hadley via 29-28 split decision. Up next, we've got a battle in the welterweight division between two former Contender Series alums and a former LFA champion in Billy Goff taking on Trey Waters. I think this is going to be a good fight, and to be honest, I backed Billy Goff as an underdog going into his last fight against Kinoshita, where a lot of people were suspecting that Kinoshita's boxing, his inside fighting, was going to be too much for Goff. And the one thing I don't like about Goff is also the thing that I like about him, which doesn't make sense, but it's the fact that when I watch Billy Goff fight, even if he gets rocked, even if he gets hurt, even if he gets hit, he survives and he finds a way to come back and just put that pace on you, man. Billy Goff is a guy who will drown you under the pace and pressure. Now, he uses good boxing combinations. He switches stances, 4, 5, 6, 7 punch combinations, works the body well, can place his shots well. He landed that straight right to the body against Kinoshita and hit him right in the solar plexus and put him down with pretty much one body shot. But he was starting to slow him down and work him over with, his boxing up top and working down to the body. On the Contender Series, Billy Goff got dropped within the first 10 seconds of the fight with a lead head kick, survived, weathered the storm, then came back with, again, really solid boxing combinations. Uppercuts, hooks, 1-2s, and ripping to the body, coming back upstairs. Just drowning his opponent and using that forward pressure to break his opponent down the stretch. Trey Waters is a guy who has some jiu-jitsu and has some submissions, but he's mainly a tall, long, rangy boxer who likes to keep it at his range, pump the jab, pull counter, land 1-2s, and kind of just find ways to outpoint you and pick you apart without allowing you to land your own shots. He reminds me a lot of another fighter on this card who we're going to talk about soon in Sean Woodson. I think there's a lot of similarities between Trey Waters and Sean Woodson where they like to keep it on the feet. They're very tall. They lean forward on that lead leg. They pump the jab. They throw 1-2s. They pull counter. And they really have to win fights by kind of dictating the pace, landing good counter strikes. But against guys who are going to come forward and put together volume, put together forward pressure, get in your face, that style doesn't work. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, Trey Waters did that against Josh Quinlan, and it worked fine. That's because Josh Quinlan, he doesn't throw a lot of volume. He's very heavy-handed. He throws big, wind-up, loopy power shots, but he doesn't have a ton of volume. The volume is what I think is going to be the key here for Billy Goff. Working from up top down to the body, back up top, 1-2, left hook to the body, hook up top, right hand, slip back, uppercut, 2-3, knee, 1-1-2, head kick, and just mixing up combinations and not allowing Trey Waters to get the distance and range that he needs to. The way you lose to guys like Trey Waters is by either being too gun shy and not throwing enough volume, staying at the range that he wants you to and allowing him to dictate the range by keeping you at his distance, or trying to get in a technical battle where you try to out-finesse a guy who really relies on counter-striking finesse and using that distance and range, using those long teep kicks and front kicks to the body, 1-2s, pull counter right hands, left hooks, uppercuts, and that's not what Billy Goff is going to do. Billy Goff is a junkyard dog, and he's coming into this fight as an underdog. He's going to get on the inside. He's going to make this a dirty, nasty fight. He does get hit. Could Waters clip him and catch him with a big shot and knock him out? Yeah, he has power, decent power, and, his boxing is crisp and clean, and he throws good combinations. And Billy Goff gets hit and gets rocked. But I think Goff is going to be able to avoid any potential submissions that Waters may throw if he does drop him, or, hurt him and then grab his neck. And I think he's going to be able to walk through that fire and avoid the combinations and kind of walk through it. Not avoid it, but walk through it to the point where the power difference is going to be crazy. I think Goff has a lot more power. I think Goff has a lot more volume. I think Goff can push a higher pace the longer that the fight goes. I think Goff knows that when he smells blood, he's going to get in your face and try to take you out, and he's not going to look to play a point fighting style, which is kind of what Trey Waters likes to do, is, point fight, use a lot of finesse, but he doesn't like to get on the inside and make it dirty if he has to do that. And Goff is the exact style where Waters' style is either going to work perfectly or it's going to blow up in his face and he's going to get finished. I think I'm going to go with option 2 here. I think Goff's going to have a tough first round in the first 2.5, 3 minutes of getting picked apart, getting kept behind the jab. He might even get rocked, but I think he'll come back, keep his defense up, rip to the body, go back up top with combinations, throw front kicks, push Trey Waters up against the cage, make him uncomfortable, and then I think he really slows him down in the second round, and I think Billy Goff is going to close that distance, rip to the body, rip back up top, throw uppercuts, throw hooks, throw 1-2s, throw knees, and I think he's going to overwhelm Trey Waters with his forward pressure and his combination striking, and I think he's going to get him out of there. I think this is a terrible stylistic matchup for both guys, but I think the Goff style compared to the Waters style, I think Goff gives more problems to Trey Waters than Waters gives to him. I like the junkyard dog. I like the forward pressure. I like the fact that he can get hurt and still come back and not just kind of wither away and get on his bike when he gets hurt. He gets up, he walks forward, he comes in and tries to get in your face. And I think that's something that's going to make a guy who fights like Trey Waters long, behind his jab, behind his reach, leaning forward on the lead leg. It's going to make him uncomfortable, and I think Goff is going to break Trey Waters. It's going to be a bridge over troubled Trey Waters with Billy Goff getting the job done via a second round TKO. I think he's going to slow him down, work the body, work up top, land some knees, and then I think he lands a big elbow up close against the cage, drops him, and then jumps on him for the TKO. Give me Billy Goff to get the job done against Trey Waters via second round TKO. I like Goff as the underdog here. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we got a battle in the lightweight division between the always entertaining and finisher style of fighter in Terrence T-Rex McKinney taking on a Contender Series alum in Esteban Ribovic, who's coming off that decision win over Kamuela Kirk. Listen, we know that Terrence McKinney's going to be dangerous in that first round. He almost got Drew Dober out of there, who's one of the best lightweights in the world, with a big knee, landed a head kick, landed a 1-2, almost got him out of there, knocked out Matt Frevola with a 1-2 right at the beginning of the fight for the fastest knockout in UFC history. Esteban Ribovic is going to be the better technical fighter. He throws better technique on the feet, or he has better technique in the punches and kicks that he throws, works the body, comes back up top. He's actually very similar to Billy Goff, but I think Esteban Ribovic is a little bit cleaner in his demeanor on the feet. They're very similar with forward pressure, a lot of explosion, a lot of, multi-shot combinations, can land shots up top that can hurt you and can finish you. I think the biggest advantage in this fight is going to be on the side of McKinney with the first round explosion and also with his grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The problem is, though, if Ribovic survives the first round, Terrence McKinney is going to fall off a cliff. He's going to get tired, and I think Ribovic is going to be able to take over. Early on, first round, Terrence McKinney could get this done. He could land a big shot and hurt Ribovic. We've seen Ribovic get clipped and get rocked before. He could take him down, get his back, lock up the body triangle, go for a submission. We've seen him try to use his grappling in fights with Eric Gonzalez, as well as the fight against Nazim Sadykhov. He controlled his back for like the entire first round and put in the body triangle, but just couldn't get the submission. I think he will be able to out-grapple Ribovic if the fight gets to the ground, probably put him in the body triangle and threaten with submissions, but I think Ribovic is going to be calm enough, going to be safe enough, and going to be able to survive that. And then I think he gets up and I think he pushes the pressure. I think he kind of walks down McKinney, gets him on the back foot, gets him to throw shots that he doesn't want to throw, and I think he starts ripping to the body, ripping back up top, walking forward, bop, bop, bop. Pop, 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 pop. Switching stances. 1-2, left overhand from southpaw. 1-2, left hook to the body, right hand. Switch southpaw, right hook, left straight, left uppercut, right hook, and just mixes it up and kind of drowns Terrence McKinney under the forward pressure and under the volume striking. We know that McKinney can win in round one. If he gets past round one, it's the Esteban Ribovic show. I like Esteban here. I think that he's going to be able to survive. It's going to be hairy. It's going to be dodgy in that first round, but I think he survives. I think he survives the first round. I think he gets on the inside, rips shots to the body, finds good counters on Terrence McKinney, who not only does he not have the best technical striking when he comes forward and is offensive, but he doesn't really have any defense when you throw shots back at him. And I think the body work and working back up top, knees to the body, pushing McKinney up against the cage, stuffing takedowns, threatening the front chokes. I think Ribovic is going to be able to break a guy who we've seen get broken in multiple fights before in Terrence T-Rex McKinney. I've had a pretty good read on McKinney's fights inside the UFC. I picked against him with Nazim Sadykhov. I picked against him with Drew Dober, even though he almost got it done. I picked him against Gonzalez. And, you know, I feel like I have a pretty good read on this guy, and I think Ribovic is going to be able to survive, weather the storm, and then come on big in round two and put Terrence McKinney away, you know, working the body and then working back up top with his combinations. Give me Esteban Ribovic to get the job done via a second-round TKO against Terrence T-Rex McKinney. Weather the early storm, walk forward, get on the inside, and fuck him up. So give me Esteban Ribovic, second-round TKO over Terrence T-Rex McKinney. Up next, we got the last fight on the prelims in the UFC's lightweight division between Chase Hooper taking on Slavaklaus Vyacheslav Borshchev. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. We know that Borshchev has issues with grappling. Got taken down a ton of times in the Mike Davis fight, but Mike Davis was able to do the same thing in his last fight against Natan Levy and even get a submission. Borshchev didn't get submitted. He got taken down by Nazim Sadykhov in his last fight, which was a back-and-forth war. First round went to Borshchev. Second round went big to Sadykhov, scoring like 2 knockdowns, almost getting a submission, getting on top, taking him down, etc., etc. And then in round 3, Borshchev came back, got on the inside, landed good boxing combinations, 1-2, rip to the body, come back up top, good body kicks, good low kicks. And, you know, that's what you expect from Borshchev. The fight ended up getting scored a draw, and that was a fight where I picked against Borshchev. This fight with Chase Hooper, I'm not going to be picking against Borshchev. I think you would have to be stupid to pick Chase Hooper in this fight. I'm not saying Chase Hooper isn't a good fighter. He showcased good striking in his fight against Nick Fiore, but, you know, comparing levels of striking between Borshchev and Nick Fiore, it's night and day. I mean, it's basically earth and outer space. That there is no comparison. And if this fight stays on the feet for even one round, Borshchev is going to knock Chase Hooper out. His combinations, he's a Russian kickboxing world champion. You see it in his combinations. You see it in the way he knocked out Maheshate with that little left hook right hand, bang, bang, knocked him out. And Maheshate's a way, way higher level of striker than Chase Hooper. We do know that Borshchev has holes in the grappling, but I think knowing that Hooper really only has a shot in shooting takedowns, taking Borshchev's back, getting to the top position, looking for submissions. I think in knowing that, it's going to make it harder for Hooper to get the takedowns, for Hooper to get on the inside. But Borshchev does only have like a 33% takedown defense. So we know that if Hooper gets him to the ground, the jiu-jitsu, the top control, it's going to be a problem. I just don't think we get that far. And I think even if Borshchev does get taken down by Hooper, I think he's going to work his way back up to the feet. He's just going to have to watch out that on his way up, he doesn't give up his back to where Hooper can jump on it, put the hooks in, put in the body triangle, and go for a submission. I think the only way Hooper wins this fight is by taking the back of Borshchev and getting a rear naked choke, or somehow controlling Borshchev for 2 out of the 3 rounds or all 3 rounds without getting involved in a striking matchup. I have a feeling that the strength of Hooper is going to be the biggest disadvantage that he has in this fight. I don't think he's going to be strong enough to take down a guy like Borshchev, whose takedown defense isn't great, but it's getting better. His get-up game is getting better. Like I said, he just has to watch out that if he gets taken down, he doesn't turn and give up his back on his way up or up against the cage. He's got to hip bump out, then go back the other way, work his way up the cage with a wall walk, but making sure not to give up his back. Whatever you do, don't give up your back. He gave it up against Mike Davis, but I think Mike Davis would ragdoll Chase Hooper even in a grappling match. He's just way stronger than Hooper is, and I think that's the difference. I think Sadyakov's way stronger than Hooper. I think Mike Davis is way stronger than Chase Hooper, and I think that, yes, Hooper might be technically better than some of those guys, but he's at a big strength disadvantage. He's getting older. He's getting stronger, because he is very young in his MMA career, but he's in the UFC for, a little bit of time now. But I think Borshchev's just going to light him up on the feet. His boxing, his kickboxing, his combinations, his power, his crispness, his finesse, it's just going to be too much. I think Hooper's going to get knocked out in the first round. Maybe he survives, but the minute Chase Hooper gets touched with a big shot, he seems to kind of freak out, get gun shy, and gets really, really nervous, and then he just ends up eating more shots. And I think that's similar to what we see here. In the Steve Garcia fight, Garcia lit him up early and knocked him out very early in the fight, and the minute he touched his chin, he knocked him out. I think Borshchev is going to be a similar thing. I think Borshchev gets on the inside, stuffs 1 or 2 takedowns, and then lights him up with his boxing, ripping to the body, coming back up top, landing that left hook, landing the 3-2 right down the middle. I think he lands a big left hook, a right hand into a left hook, catches Hooper on the chin, drops him, lets him back up, rips to the body, goes back up top with a shot, and crumbles Chase Hooper in the first round. Give me Slava Claus Borshchev to win this fight via a first round knockout. I think he's going to put Chase Hooper down, and I think he might get up once, but he won't get up again, and I think he's going to knock Chase Hooper out. I really like Slava Claus in this fight. If Hooper was stronger, I might be a little bit more worried, but I think that even if he gets taken down, he can work his way back up. And even if he doesn't get submitted, I think he will not be able to be controlled for 2 out of the 3 rounds or all 3 rounds. So give me Slava Claus, Vyacheslav Borshchev by first round knockout against Chase Hooper. And the first fight up on the main card, we have Robelis Despain, who's coming in off that first round knockout in about 20 seconds against Josh Parisian in his UFC debut, taking on a much higher level of competition and a much more powerful and more polished striker in Waldo Cortez Acosta. I really like this fight. I think this is a good fight. We know that Despain is only 5-0, came into the UFC at 4-0, got that first round KO against Josh Parisian, which I can't believe anybody would play Josh Parisian in that fight. If you did, shame on you. No point in doing that, even if you try to get, clothesline value and all that shit that people talk about. I'm sorry, but, clothesline value, I get it, but you either win the bet or you lose. And sometimes you lose a bet and it looks good in hindsight, but at the end of the day, you still lost. So I think talking about that in certain regards just isn't a good thing. So, sometimes you make good bets and they lose. I get it, but, the whole CLV, blah, blah, blah. No, Josh Parisian should never be bet on, ever in the UFC. I'm sorry, I know I went on a tangent there, but all respect to Parisian, getting in there and fighting and winning some fights as well, but, I'm just going off what I see. Robelis Despain is a Taekwondo Olympic gold medalist. I believe he was a gold medalist or silver medalist or something like that. And you don't really see much of it in his fights because he knocks people out in like under a minute. He has like a 5-second knockout, a 10-second knockout. His UFC fight lasted like under 30 seconds. He's got good counters on the back foot. He can throw, tornado roundhouse kicks, spinning kicks, big roundhouse kicks to the head. Moves very fleet-footed. Can walk in with big darting punches like a taekwondo or karate style of fighter. And Waldo Cortez Acosta is a good striker as well. He can put his combinations together. He can land on your chin. He can knock you out. But I think he's outmatched here against Despain. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, Despain's the next world champion or anything like that. But he reminds me of a heavyweight version of an Israel Adesanya. Now, is he as technical as Izzy? No. But a heavyweight version of Adesanya, mind you. And I'm talking about like an actual heavyweight version of Adesanya. That's Robelis Despain. He's fast, he's fleet-footed, he moves better than almost any heavyweight in the division, aside from Cyril Gane, I would say, and Tom Aspinall. But, man, I don't know. I think this Despain guy is for real. We obviously don't know. We haven't seen him get taken down. We haven't seen his grappling. But Waldo Cortez Acosta is not going to be a guy who tests the grappling game of Robelis Despain. He's going to strike. And yes, he has power. If Despain walks in with his hands down and zigs when he should have zags and gets clipped on the chin, he can get knocked out. But I think Despain should be like a minus 350, minus 400 in this fight. I bet him today at minus 180. And the line immediately jumped to minus 200 like 2 minutes later. And I think that the minus 180 value on Robelis Despain is unbelievable because I think he's too quick, too clean, and too explosive for a guy like Waldo Cortez Acosta. We haven't seen Acosta get knocked out in the UFC, but if anybody can do it, I think it's Robelis Despain. I think Despain is quick, he's fleet-footed, he's good off the back foot, he's sharp, he's explosive, and I think he has all the weapons to beat a guy. He's going to be faster, more explosive, have better movement, better footwork, and he's going to clip Waldo Cortez Acosta coming in. Acosta can win. Acosta has big power. Acosta can land on his chin if, like I said, Despain zigs when he should have zagged. And, maybe Acosta will resort to the wrestling and we can see the grappling of Despain. But I think he's going to want to get into a striking match, and I think that's a bad idea. So I think Robelis Despain is going to knock out Waldo Cortez Acosta in the first round. Again, it's a big jump up from Josh Parisian. It's a much more dangerous fight for Waldo Cortez Acosta than Josh Parisian. Don't get me wrong, I understand the level of Acosta, but, knocking out Lucas Bredsky is not going to make me think that you're going to beat a guy like Robelis Despain, but Acosta does have more UFC experience. Cortez Acosta has more UFC experience, and, that does play a factor in most fights, but I think Despain is going to clip him with a big counter, hurt him, and knock him out in round one. I think he's going to catch him with a backstep right hand or a backstep hook or even a head kick. I'd love to see Despain win with a head kick. I'm going to go with that. Give me Robelis Despain, first round head kick knockout, going 2-0 in the UFC and getting a vicious viral KO over Waldo Cortez Acosta to open up the main card. I got Robelis Despain, first round head kick KO in his second UFC fight. The next fight up on the main card is in the featherweight division between Sean Woodson, or Sean the Sniper Woodson, I believe is his nickname, taking on Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres. I see a lot of people heavy on the Woodson side, and it makes sense. Woodson can grapple, Woodson can wrestle, Woodson's very long and rangy, he can go for submissions if he needs to, but the key for Woodson is, like we talked about with other fighters on the card, like we talked about with Trey Waters, it's keeping the distance and range and pumping the jab. Pumping the jab, pumping the 1-2, putting the combinations together, working the body. Woodson is one of the cleanest boxers in the UFC. And I know there's a lot of really good boxers, but he's very clean and he uses his length, he uses his reach, pumps the jab, 1-1-2, 1-3 uppercut, 1-2 bolo punch uppercut, 3-2, 1-1-2, 2-3-2. He can put his combinations together and he knows how to use his reach. He doesn't have the best defense. He can get clipped. He can get hurt. He had that fight where he got dropped and then, kneed on the ground and knocked out, but the fight got restarted. Woodson came back and won the fight after pretty much getting knocked out on the ground or he got hurt, something happened, and then it was a no contest or a DQ because he kneed him in the head on the ground, and just a big shit show. But I think the style of Alex Caceres can give Sean Woodson some trouble. I'm not necessarily saying I think Caceres is going to win, but I think Caceres' in and out movement, the head kicks, the same side punches into the head kicks, front kicks, side kicks to the body. The footwork and the movement, I think, can give Woodson some trouble because the boxing style that he employs works best on stationary opponents that he can kind of just control, use the jab, move back, 1-1-2, 1-2-3, and kind of pick apart. But they're more stationary than he is, and he can move. Caceres is not a stationary target. Caceres darts in with straight punches. He puts his kicks behind his punches. He can go punch, same side head kick, like he knocked out Julian Juicy J. Erosa with. Erosa submitted Sean Woodson, so that is a common opponent. But I think that Caceres can knock out Woodson just like he knocked out Erosa, because Erosa is a very tall, long, rangy fighter, just like Woodson. I think Woodson uses his jab better. I think Woodson uses his length and uses his reach better, and he's much more technical than Julian Erosa, but I still think he's a defensive liability. I do think Woodson can probably pick apart Caceres with his jab. I think Woodson can go for takedowns, but I think the jiu-jitsu of Alex Caceres might be a little bit too much for Woodson to be able to get off anything offensive or have much success on the top position. And I don't think he's going to be able to hold Caceres down. I think the head kicks, the same side punches into head kicks, rolling into head kicks, the darting punches, the hands low style. Like, if he gets caught behind his jab early, then Woodson's probably going to cruise to a decision. But I think that with those kicks, with the in and out movement, with the hands low style, the darting attacks, I think that Caceres is liable and viable to catch Sean Woodson on the chin because of how tall, long, and rangy he is, and he has that tall man's defense. I think Caceres can clip him. I think he can catch him with a straight punch. I think he can catch him with a darting punch. I think he can catch him with a head kick. I think he can catch him with an elbow. I think that Woodson is the better boxer, but I think Caceres is the better fighter, and I think that's what we're going to see. Would I be surprised if Woodson just picked apart Caceres and kept him behind his jab? No. Has Caceres had the most success in the UFC? No. But I think this guy is better than people give him credit for. Even myself, I've doubted Caceres at points where I shouldn't have. And I think I'm going to pick Alex Caceres here. I believe he is the underdog. I think those head kicks and the awkward angles are going to be able to catch the tall, long, rangy Sean Woodson. I think he's going to dart in when Woodson doesn't expect it, and he's going to clip him with either a darting straight or a little roll into a head kick, and he's going to drop him and put him down. So I'm going to go with Alex or Bruce Leroy Caceres to just be too tricky and too versatile for the more one-dimensional fighter like Woodson and win this fight via a knockout. I'm going to go Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres to get the job done via a second-round head kick KO. Man, predicting back-to-back head kick KOs is definitely something that most people shouldn't do, but I think in these fights, in these spots, it's definitely a possibility and it's a viable option. So give me Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres to get the job done via a second-round head kick knockout over Sean the Sniper Woodson. Bruce Leroy for the win. The next fight up is in the lightweight division. It's going to be a banger between Mateusz Rebecki taking on Diego Ferreira. Rebecki's a guy or Rombeski, however you want to say it. He's 19-1 as a professional fighter. Diego Ferreira 18-5. But the higher competition level, which we talk about a lot on this podcast, is on the side of Ferreira. Ferreira's coming off that knockout victory over Michael Johnson in the second round, I believe. But he was getting dominated in that fight, and it looked like Michael Johnson was going to win the decision. He stepped off to the outside angle in the orthodox stance and landed a big overhand right, just like Josh Emmett. Pretty much identical. If you put Michael Johnson's knockout loss to Josh Emmett and the knockout loss to Diego Ferreira side by side, literally the same thing. And Michael Johnson was winning the fight against Josh Emmett as well. I think Ferreira is going to have better jiu-jitsu than Rebecki, but I don't know what it is about Rebecki. He's a really good southpaw. He uses a very good straight left hand, good right hooks, really good inside low kicks against the opposite stance fighter, and you saw him just destroy Loik Radzhabov with those inside low kicks. He's powerful, he's strong, and he's just a mean fighter. That's the one thing I like about Rebecki, is that he's very mean. But he went in against Nick Fiore and was kind of getting pieced up at certain points in that fight. Got wobbled with a step-in elbow, got hit with some uppercuts, but mainly resorted to his grappling, takedowns, top control, and just kind of beat up Nick Fiore on the ground and landed some good shots on the feet. I think Ferreira is a live dog here, being minus 370 for Rebecca. I don't agree with that. I think maybe minus 200 would be the highest I would put Rebecca at. Even though his record's really good, Ferreira's fought some of the best in the sport. I mean, Beneil Dariush, Michael Johnson, Mateus Gamrot, you name it. Diego Ferreira's been in there with some of the best fighters in the world. Even back in the day, he fought Dustin Poirier, back when Poirier first moved up to lightweight. So Ferreira's been in there with everybody. And Rebecca is going to be in this fight with a guy who's had more UFC experience, but I still think Rebecca is just going to be too aggressive and too mean for a guy like Diego Ferreira, who's been finished in almost all of his losses in the UFC. Got TKO'd with a knee to the body by Mateus Gamrot. He lost the decision to Beneil Dariush. He's been finished in a lot of his fights. And I know he got the win over Michael Johnson, but Rebecca's on a different level than Johnson. Not in terms of UFC experience, but just in terms of being a fighter. Uses a good straight left hand, the check right hook. 1-2s, very good inside low kicks, can grapple. We saw against Roosevelt Roberts, he took him down, got a quick submission. Even from side control or the crucifix, he can go for a little off the side armbar. And he's very good with his grappling as well as his striking. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's strong. He's dangerous. And I think he's going to be too aggressive for Diego Ferreira. Do I advocate you going and betting on Rebecca as like a minus 370? No, I think that's too high. I think at that point you should just take fight doesn't go the distance, but that's probably going to be juiced as well. But I think it was plus money in his last fight against Radzhabov to not go the distance, and or the under 2.5 was plus money if I remember correctly, because Rebecca has gone to decision a few times. But I think Rebecca's going to get this done. I think it's a good fight. I think it's a tough fight. I think it is a tough test for Rebecca, but I think the physicality, the strength, the power, it's just going to be too much for Ferreira. Would I be surprised if Ferreira knocked out Rebecca? I'd be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. I think based off his UFC experience, based off the level of competition and the guys he's been in there with, if Ferreira pulled one out of the hat or won a really good scramble and caught a submission, I wouldn't be surprised, because Ferreira's got really good jiu-jitsu, really good scrambling, really good grappling, can fall off the side into submissions, can go for submissions off of his back, and knows how to strike on the feet, and has decent power in his own right. But I think the forward pressure, the counter ability, the power, the inside low kicks, the 1-2s, the check hooks, the body work, I think it's going to be too much. I think Rebecca's going to have a competitive first round, but I think eventually he's just going to break down Diego Ferreira, and I think he's going to get him out of there. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Mateus Rombeski to get another win in the UFC and secure this win by a third round ground and pound TKO. I think he's going to get to the ground, get to the grappling, break down Ferreira on the feet, eventually hurt him with something, get him to panic wrestle, jump on him, get to the mount, and just pound him out or flatten him out when he's on his back and pound him out with ground and pound. So give me Mateus Rombeski to get another win in the UFC over his toughest level of competition in Diego Ferreira via a third round ground and pound TKO in what should be a really, really solid fight. Up next, we have the featured bout of the evening in the UFC's light heavyweight division between Atomic Alonzo Menifield taking on Carlos Black Jag Olberg. Man, this is a fight that I think a lot of people are counting out Alonzo Menifield, and it would not shock me if Menifield knocked Olberg out cold. It really wouldn't. I think Olberg should be the favorite. But I think you have to look at Menifield's fight against Dustin Jacoby and think one thing. Olberg is more powerful than Jacoby, but is he more durable than Jacoby? I don't think so. I think Jacoby is more durable than Carlos Olberg. I think that Olberg can get clipped. I think we've seen Olberg get knocked out by Kennedy Nzechukwu, and Nzechukwu hasn't had the best run in the UFC. He had a couple really good wins, was getting destroyed by Olberg, and then Olberg got knocked out. I think Menifield has technical striking, but I think he has just enough of that brawl style and that forward pressure and that slip and roll, that bob and weave, that overhand right, that big left hook, the check left hook, the uppercuts, and he has good takedown defense, and I think he has the recipe that could spoil the party for Olberg here. Olberg had a great knockout against Nikolai Negumereanu with that jab into the check left hook that knocked him out cold. He knocked out Ihor Potieria. Potieria looked real good against Robert Britchek and then got knocked out this past weekend against Michel Pereira. Well, basically got dropped and then got knocked out with a knee off of like a moonsault that Pereira did, and then got submitted and tapped in. It was submitted unconscious, I guess. Put to sleep in the choke, I should say. I've been talking for too long today, guys. But in this fight, I think Ulberg is going to have the better footwork. But I think the power, along with the technicality of Menefield, can give Ulberg a lot of trouble. And I think if you go back and you watch the Down Jung fight, he fought very crisp, very clean, very technical. Jab, jab, circle out, angle step, jab, moving around, circling left and right. He doesn't always only circle like in one direction. But the biggest thing I noticed in the tape was that he really circled towards the opponent's left side. He was really circling himself into the left hand of the opponent. Now, you would do that against an orthodox fighter. You don't want to get clipped with their power backhand. You want to circle away from the power. That's not a bad thing. But Menefield has such a good left hook and such a good check left hook, along with having a powerful right hand. And I feel like eventually Menefield is just going to close off Ulberg up against the cage, and he's going to crack him with that left hook, and I think he's going to knock him out. Alonzo Menefield is like a plus 200 underdog. I think Menefield's going to knock out Ulberg here. Going into the fight, I think I was higher on Carlos Ulberg because of his technicality, because of his speed, because of his finesse, because of his power. But I think being that finesse style of fighter against a fighter like Menefield, I think it can cause a lot of problems for you. Because Jacoby's kind of the same way. I would say Ulberg has a lot more power, which is going to make this fight more difficult for Menefield. But, you know, he was getting pieced up, he was getting picked apart, but he found his openings and landed his big shot. And I find it to be a very similar situation here, where it's going to play out very similar to that, except instead of it going to decision, I don't think Ulberg is going to survive the shots as good as Jacoby. And I think he might get dropped once and survive, but I think once Menefield drops him once, it's going to be a very short time after that when he drops him again, and he clips him with that left hook Russian style, where he kind of throws it with the palm down, you know, knuckles out, bang, clips him on the chin. I think he's going to get him circling into his power in the left hook, and I think he's going to cut him off, get him circling, catch him moving. You know, Ulberg's going to probably piece him up a little bit, land some good shots, get into his groove, and then I think Menefield's just going to wait. He's going to wait. He's going to throw that overhand, dip with the overhand right a couple times, jab to the body, go with the overhand, and eventually he's going to cut him off, circle him to his left side, and bang, catch him with that left hook. Circle him to the left side of Menefield, his right side, and just bang, catch him with that left hook on the chin and put him down. I'm going with Atomic Alonzo Menefield to get the upset win here as a plus 200 underdog and do so by knockout against Carlos Ulberg. Give me Atomic. I can't say this right today, guys. Give me Atomic Alonzo Menefield to get the job done via a first round knockout against Carlos Ulberg. Maybe second round. I'll go second round. Let me do second round. Alonzo Menefield, Atomic Alonzo Menefield, via a second round knockout with that left hook against Carlos Ulberg. I think we're going to go with the underdog here. All right, up next in the co-main event of the evening, you have St. Louis's own Joaquin Numanza Buckley coming in off that huge second round ground and pound TKO victory over a contender in the division in Vicente Luque, taking on a somewhat newcomer to the UFC, coming off back-to-back first-round knockouts against Bruno Ferreira and most recently Swedriquis Dumas in Nursultan Ruziboev. Ruziboev and Buckley is a tough fight to call. Ruziboev is usually a middleweight, but, being at 170, this fight's going to be at 170. He's never actually won a fight at 170. He's never won a fight at 170. He's never been finished at 170, but he's never won a fight at 170 because he is a middleweight. And I think that's something that you have to look at because Buckley hasn't lost at 170 yet. He lost at 185, got knocked out by Alessio Di Chirico with a head kick. Got knocked out by Chris Curtis with that big left hand. But he's never lost at 170. He's fleet, slick, light on his feet, in and out. Very Mike Tyson-esque style, but he adds kicks to it, obviously. So kind of a mix between a Mike Tyson bob and weave and a traditional martial artist being able to throw body kicks, head kicks, spinning back kicks to the face like he knocked out Impa Kasanganay with. I think that Ruzi Boev is a tough test for him, though. I think the power and speed of Buckley can be a problem for Ruzi Boev, but I think Ruzi Boev could probably out-grapple Buckley, and I think he more than likely can get the best of the striking exchanges. I'm actually surprised that Ruzi Boev is an underdog in this fight. I didn't expect that. I'm not basing this pick off the odds, but I feel like I also have to think about the fact that I pick against Buckley a lot. I don't pick Buckley to win a lot of fights on this podcast. He's got a good style. Like I said, very good with his bob and weave, getting in and out of range, landing his counters, but he's never had the best defense. He's always been real good on the offense, but he's never had the best head movement. And the best defense that he has is his footwork, the in-and-out style, but he can run into shots. Now, I was watching tape on Ruzi Boev today, and the one thing I didn't like is if you go back and you watch the Cedriques Dumas fight, he threw like 17 uppercuts, like one after the other, and eventually just, caught Cedriques with the uppercut and finished him at the end of the first round. But there was like that eye poke before then. The ref didn't see it, and then he finished him. And in the fight against Bruno Ferreira, he just caught the kick, landed a straight right hand, and then landed some ground and pound to follow up and knocked him out. So we haven't seen a lot of Ruzi Boev. On the regional scene, he landed a big, slam in a triangle and knocked out his opponent. He's had some submissions. He's landed some ground and pound. We know the guy can grapple. I think if he resorts to his grappling in this fight against Buckley, it would probably be the best decision. But I also think he can be competitive on the feet against Joaquin Buckley. But this fight makes me nervous because, like I said, I feel like I pick against Buckley a lot, and he keeps proving me wrong, and he keeps winning. And then when I do pick him, he loses. So I can't seem to get a read on New Mansa in terms of breaking down his fights from a technical perspective. But we know he's going to be in and out, light on the feet. He's going to be quick with his boxing combinations. And we don't know how good Ruzi Boev's defense is. He doesn't really move his head. He's long. He's tall. He throws good boxing combinations, 1-2s, uppercuts, obviously, overhands, touches the body, can catch your kick. We know he can wrestle. We know he can grapple. We know he's strong. I think the best way to win this fight would be to take down Buckley, get to the top position, land ground and pound, pass into mount, and look for a submission. We haven't seen Buckley get submitted in the UFC, but I think if anybody can do it, it might be Ruzi Boev. I thought Luque was live to submit Buckley, and we saw what happened with that fight, but that was a weird Luque. He was like very gun shy and didn't really throw much of any offense the entire fight. He just looked like a ghost in there, and maybe it's just because he's been in too many wars and he was too afraid to get caught again, but at the end of the day he ended up getting caught and finished on the ground with the ground and pound. Was that more of a Buckley looking really good, or was that more of a Luque not being himself? We don't know, but I'm going to side with Ruzi Boev. He's the underdog at like plus 140 right now. But regardless of the odds, I'm going to take Ruzi Boev in this fight. I would not be surprised if Buckley proved me wrong again. But I think Ruzi Boev is just a little bit too much for Buckley. Obviously, we know UFC experience goes to the side of Buckley. But I think Ruzi Boev is powerful enough. He can use his wrestling. He can grapple. He's got power on the feet. He's pretty technical with the way he throws his shots. I think Buckley could clip him. The thing that Buckley's going to do is catch Ruzi Boev moving in with like a big counter and throw like a 3 or 4 punch combo with the hooks and uppercuts, the rolling, bobbing, and weaving, and he could clip him. But I think I might stay away from Ruzi Boev in terms of a bet. I think I might stay away from this fight in terms of a bet altogether. Because, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Buckley proved me wrong again. But I'm going to go with Ruzi Boev. I'm going to go with Ruzi Boev by a knockout in this fight. I think he's going to keep Buckley at range, but I think he's going to catch Buckley coming in. Kind of like what I said with Luque. I think Ruzi Boev's long enough, uses his reach better than Luque, and I think he's going to catch him coming in with either a big overhand or a big straight right down the middle, drop him, and then get him out of there. Give me Nursultan Ruzi Boev to get the job done against Joaquin Numansa Buckley via a first round knockout. I'm going to say he gets him out of there in round 1. I think he catches him coming in and knocks him out. So give me Nursultan Ruzi Boev on short notice by first round knockout against Buckley, but not super confident in it. And like I said, Buckley's proved me wrong before, so take that pick at your own risk. But we're going Ruziboev, first round knockout. And now we're at the main event. The main event between Derek the Black Beast Lewis taking on Rodrigo Nascimento. Stand up for UFC St. Louis. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this breakdown just because I don't think there is a lot to break down. I think the more well-rounded fighter is Nascimento. I think the fighter who's better technically is Rodrigo Nascimento. I think Nascimento's the better grappler, and we always know that Lewis is good on the feet. Sometimes he can reverse positions, but Derek Lewis doesn't really reverse positions from a technical perspective. He kind of just flails and uses his strength and gets out of positions where other guys can control him. I think Nascimento is going to win this fight more based on points or potentially getting Lewis to the ground and getting a sub. But I think that these type of fights are the type of fights that Derek Lewis wins. These aren't the really solid technicians. These aren't the guys with very solid, amazing knockout power. This isn't a guy with phenomenal top control in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a well-rounded fighter, but he's not extremely powerful and extremely dangerous in any one perspective of the game or any one area in the game. He's an overall well-rounded fighter. I think it's a tough fight for Lewis, but these are the type of guys that Derek Lewis knocks out. This is like a Marcos Rogério de Lima. Rodrigo Nascimento is like a Marcos Rogério de Lima. These are the guys that Lewis finds the big uppercut, finds the big overhand, finds the big flying knee, reverses position on the ground and lands knockout, shots on the ground. I think Lewis is at the point in his career where he can get some knockouts, but we're not going to see him challenge for a title. We're not going to see him win the heavyweight championship. But Derek Lewis is always entertaining. He's always fun to watch. And that's something that we always think about. That's why we love the Black Beast. He's not the best in any one area, but he's got knockout power, and he's exciting to watch. I think Derek Lewis is going to win this fight. I think, like I said, these are the type of fights that Derek Lewis wins. There's a guy who's, well-rounded but not extremely dangerous on the ground or not extremely dangerous from the top, not extremely dangerous on the feet. He's a well-rounded fighter. Would I be surprised if Derek Lewis lost? No, because at this point in his career, I love the Black Beast. I love Derek Lewis, but he's kind of a head case. But I think this is a fight where Lewis can find that knockout shot. I don't think it's going to be first round. I don't think it's going to be the flying knee like it was in his last win inside the octagon, but I think he lands a big uppercut at a certain point, gets Nascimento up against the cage, lands a big shot, jumps on him and gets him out of there. I'm going to go Derek the Black Beast Lewis to win the fight via a second-round knockout. I think he is going to get him up against the fence. He's going to cut him off. He's going to crowd him. He's going to push him back. And I think he finds the knockout shot. And yeah, that's really it. I don't have a ton to break down for this main event. It's not an amazing main event, but everybody's going to be excited for Derek Lewis. And even though I've said it multiple times, these are the type of fights that Derek Lewis wins. So I'm going to go Derek the Black Beast Lewis to find that kill shot on Rodrigo Nascimento in the second round. Give me Derek Lewis, second round knockout over Rodrigo Nascimento in the main event.